All right. Okay. I'm always like, we got it. Here we go. We got
We got it.
our special guest for this episode, Mr. Bones.
Yeah.
Newest addition to the plus size section.
The skinny legend himself.
The skinny legend himself has arrived for the intentional weight loss episode. Let's go. Okay, everybody. Thank you for being here. My wisdom teeth hurt.
I am in pain.
I am in pain, but I'm here for you. For you guys.
Next week, my teeth will not be.
Hopefully, yes. I hope they pull them out. I'm terrified of it, though, because they have to pull all four out, and then I have to have a fifth one taken out. So, yeah. You know, just fun stuff. But anyways, Hayley, what were your highs and lows of this week?
Oh, my highs. Let's see. I got 3 new tattoos last Friday. So since it's been a week, I'm counting that. I saw Paramore on Sunday. We can talk about how life-changing that was a little bit later. And my lows, well, there's just one. I stepped in a hole and twisted my ankle a couple days ago in front of a bunch of construction workers. So, love that for me.
Did any of them try to help you? Or did they just allow it to happen in front of them?
Well, I didn't like all the way fall, so there wasn't really anything for them to do. It wasn't like a hole that they dug. It was just like a dip in my yard.
Oh, okay.
But no, they did not. I didn't make eye contact with any of them to see if they were looking or not. So
okay. That makes sense.
Just try to be cool, you know. I meant to do that. Okay? Yeah. Yeah, it's okay. But of course, like, from my foot all the way up to my spine, that whole side is like, oh, you overexerted us, and is like really tight and sore. So otherwise, yeah, I can walk fine.
So dramatic.
I know.
I'm glad you're okay. Those are some pretty amazing highs. Like, yeah. That's incredible. Paramore in concert. Yay. 3 tattoos, which are so cute. What tattoos did you get? Will you talk to them about them?
So I got a ramp on my calf, which for anyone who's not from Appalachia, a ramp is, it's like a wild onion. Delicious. Love it. It's a seasonal thing. I ate them a lot when I was a kid. I'm obsessed with them. So had those with a side of squirrel. Just kidding, but...
Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, but I did commemorate it. I did commemorate the ramp on my calf, and I got a 444 on the inside of my left arm, because that's my favorite angel number, and I got Not Today across my little arm bone there. Game of Thrones reference, for anyone who knows.
You know.
Exactly.
You know. Yeah, speaking of eating squirrel, when I was, like, listening to the episode, apparently the only thing my mic caught was when I said, is that a poor thing? And you were like, I don't know, my family's not poor. And it cut off where I was like, oh, I'm just asking because my family, I come from white trailer trash. So it was kind of me being like, I was poor. I didn't know that this was part of the poor culture. But instead, it sounds like, oh, is that a poor thing? Yeah. And I'm like, fantastic. Time to jump off a cliff.
It wasn't that bad. In the moment, I was like, what is this question?
It was because I thought that I had missed out on part of my own culture. But then it came across. It's the neurodivergency. And I'm like, it's taken... That's why I haven't posted it anywhere yet. That clip that you pulled. Because I was like, everyone's going to think I'm a fucking bitch. Like...
I thought that I cut it out of one of them.
I
Maybe
think
I
you
didn't.
did.
I meant to, because
Yeah.
it was like the start of a little segue that really wasn't what I was trying to get at with the video, but
Yeah.
it's okay.
It's
Things happen.
just so you guys know, it's part of my lows this week is that I'm
Oh,
not an entitled asshole. I was trying to relate to my own upbringing, but sure. Um,
honestly, for a split second when you asked me that, I was like, have I misrepresented my upbringing? Like, I was racking my own neurodivergent brain. Like, did I cause this in some way? So it's really okay.
it was just my neurodivergent brain. My spicy was like, oh, this will make sense with absolutely no context. Like, great. That's fan. And then I tried to like give it context. And of course, like, we were just in conversation. So
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't until after that I was like, oh my God, this is your worst fear coming out right now. That's great. I'm glad that we're here. I'm going to go ahead and do a trigger warning at the beginning of this episode. I don't know if we're going to be talking about poo, but it may come up, guys. So, trigger warning. We're talking about bodies in this episode. We're talking about weight loss. We're talking about surgery. We're talking about possibly fecal matter. So, if that's not your cup of tea, you might want to skip this episode and just hang out with us on social media. So, yeah. Um, back to my highs and lows, because right, I didn't
Yes.
skip over you this week. Thank God. Okay. That also was like you're a terrible co-host. Terrible. Anyways,
No, you're being hard on yourself.
I'm being hard on myself. It's the medication. When I take meds like pain medicine, oh, trigger warning, talking about medication. I just never know. So when I'm on pain medicine, I get sad. I become sad, Sam,
Mm.
and she is so sad because her
Oh.
teeth hurt and she's scared of the dentist and he touched her mouth and now she has to have surgery and she has to go under anesthesia, but it's not like real anesthesia, it's like just IV anesthesia. And I'm like, that's kind of worse. I don't know why, but like for me and like the dentist, he was so sweet. That's my low, everybody. I'm talking about my low. Is that my wisdom teeth? I have to have wisdom teeth removal surgery next week. Um, or whenever they can schedule me. I go to the doctor on Monday. Anyways, doesn't matter. So he was like, he was the nicest dentist in the entire world. He was so sweet to me. And he was like, hey, babe, don't worry. Like, you're going to get anesthesia. You won't even know what things happen. And he's like, but you are awake. And he could see that he had messed up in that moment. Because of course
Yeah.
I start crying and he was like, I lost you there. I lost you there. He's like, that's my bad. That's my bad. And I was like, yeah, get me out of here immediately. Like I don't care that they're causing me pain. I'll just live with pain forever.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely my low is the wisdom teeth thing. I have a lot of dental trauma and it's causing me my jaw to hurt. So if I'm kind of like not talking a lot in this episode, even though this episode is about Hayley, so I'm not going to talk anyways. But this episode and the next episode, guys, just bear with me. I can't be sunshine all the time. I'm in pain, but I'm here. Um, my high is that I'm doing a Reiki workshop. It would have already passed by the time this episode airs. But I'm preparing for the Reiki workshop with Lotha J.
Woo!
Woo! And I will be launching my course, my Igniting the Magic Within course, which is about using magic to help with body acceptance and empowerment. So
That's so awesome.
it's such a dope course. Is it 20 modules? Yeah, it is. This is a commitment. Is it actually tangible results? Yes. So you get what you get. So that's a high that I'm gonna say. By the time this episode airs, it will be in my link in bio on my account at Sam Rose Realness. So go check that out, you guys. If you're a thicky witchy babe, this is for you.
Hell yeah.
All right. To get to the nitty gritty of the episode, Hayley, what is this episode about?
This is about my experience with intentional weight loss. And me and my neurodivergent ass, we are not one for brevity. This outline is like 4 pages long, but we're gonna get it popping.
I'm going to emote because I was looking at the outline. I was like, oh my God.
Yep.
Before we start, I want you to explain to the listeners and the viewers what intentional weight loss is and why intentional weight loss is important to us to share.
Okay. Can you tell me why it's important to you so I don't misspeak?
Okay. Intentional weight loss is important to me because I think that when you just advertise weight loss in general, it aligns with anti-fatness. And that is not the case for either of us.
Mm-hmm.
We both have our personal reasons. Hayley's going to share their personal reasons, and then I'm going to do an episode of my personal reasons of why weight loss was inevitable for us, why it was a must do, not a just a should do or want to do. It doesn't stem from anti-fatness. It doesn't stem from hating our bodies when we were fat or anything like that. It stemmed for me and for Hayley for medical conditions that forced us to make that decision. And in doing so, intentional weight loss, I feel like gives you a better understanding of what it's like not only to be larger, but to go through the weight loss process and to still be able to align yourself with the fat bodied community because you didn't leave it because you wanted to. You left it because you had to. For some people still stay in it. Obviously, Hayley and I both consider ourselves both still fat bodied. So yeah, that's why it's important to me. You go ahead.
Okay. Just let me gather my thoughts here for a sec. You can cut me staring blankly. So intentional weight loss I was obviously listening to you and I didn't hear you outright define it, but it's basically just losing weight with the intention of reaching whatever goal you want. That could be, if you do want to be thin, if you just want to lose a little weight, whatever your goal might be, you're just trying to shrink your body with a purpose and not accidentally. That's really really it. But I would say intentional weight loss is important to me because I feel like there obviously is a lot of discourse around how any intentional weight loss is fat phobic. I don't necessarily agree with that because at the end of the day, we have to make the right choice for our bodies individually. And I feel like we've both said this at different times. Like, there are people that are our size out there that are happy and live their best life. If you're happy with how your body is and what you can do in your life, there's absolutely no need for you to lose weight if you don't want to. And we would never suggest that. Even, we wouldn't be out here evangelizing like, oh, you should get weight loss surgery.
Right.
Like, it's a very personal choice. And, we just have to do what's best for ourselves. And for me, it was getting the VSG surgery, vertical sleeve gastrectomy. So,
yep.
Yeah. All right. I got a emote.
Go ahead. And now we're going to get into Hayley's side of Hayley's origin story and Hayley's journey into intentional weight loss. Here we go.
Yes. When I was writing this outline, I did start out just wanting to talk about my surgery, but I was like, I kept thinking of other things like the backstory, the lore behind me. I was like, I got to reference that. And then eventually was like, you know what? I've just got to take it from the top.
Take it from the top.
Turn this into like a 4-hour episode. Just kidding. It's not going to be that long.
Thank you. I'm barely hanging in here. Not because the content's not good, because I'm dying.
Like, wow, this person sucks.
That's not it. I'm sorry.
No, I know.
Okay.
It's okay. This honestly was a good week. It's not like it was ever a good week for your teeth to be bad, but since I'm carrying the bulk of this episode,
Yeah.
it's good you don't have to talk a lot. Like, if this was your week for this, whoo boy, RIP.
R.I.P.
But anyway, so my origin story. So I know I've mentioned it before, but I have been a fat person since I was 4, since I was a little baby. I know I've mentioned that my parents are both heavy. Um, my dad was and has been for most of his life. My mom, primarily, it happened after she had me and my brother. So she spent the first half of her life as a thin person. Um, I wanted to just kind of like give a little bit of backstory because I feel like there's a lot of stuff in my childhood. And I'm sure this is not a unique experience. Like, it's easy to be upset and like just outright villainize our parents for how they may have mishandled our, issues with our weight, our bodies when they were raising us. And it's not to remove any responsibility from them, but they went through it too. Like, this type of treatment is generational.
Yeah.
And it's, I feel like this wasn't something people worried about a lot in like the 1800s, but the past few generations, it's been it's been an issue. It's been something that's been learned and passed down. But so my dad was a chunky little baby till he started playing football in high school. Trying to remember, he started to like thicken back up in his mid 30s, like around the time I was born. He worked at a chemical plant, though. It was really sedentary. He worked shift work, so the shifts rotated, so his routine pretty non-existent. Taking food with him or buying food in the cafeteria there, like, just didn't have access to a ton of healthy options. I mean, this was also in the 80s and 90s and 2000s, so
Mm-hmm.
way fewer options than we have now.
Right.
But he did share with me that when he was a kid back in the 60s, that his mom tried to put him on, or did put him on prescription diet pills. And back then, that was basically just like meth.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he, it's not like he and I have had a lot of deep conversations about this subject. This is just stuff that I remember of him telling me over the years, but fucked his teeth up, like his back teeth. He's had issues with those. And just like the physical ramifications of putting a kid on something like that back then, whenever it wasn't safe. It wasn't even
Right.
safe for adults. So my mom, she did grow up petite, but she still did have a lot of like issues with diet culture in her life. She was a majorette in high school. It was like on the dance team, doing the kicks and all that stuff. So unfortunately, their bodies and their weight were really hyper focused on because of that. So because all their kicks had to line up and
Right.
crap like that. So there was one story that I remember of her telling me about. It was a time when their high school cafeteria had these chocolate eclairs, which is just like a little pastry. And of course, she was all about them. She was hitting those things every day at lunch, just loving them. And it was all well and good until one day at practice when her coach called her out in front of everybody on the team while they were doing their routine, telling her to drop the weight because her kicks weren't as high.
Oh.
Like, just blasted that out in front of a bunch of high school girls when you know that they're not the kindest people ever.
Right.
So,
What the fuck?
right. And I mean, my mom told me that story like it was just, like it was nothing. Like that was just how it was. And I mean, she got it honest from my grandma. My grandma grew up a larger woman, and she was on a diet like all of her adult life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She was on a diet until her dementia had progressed to the point where she didn't give a shit about that anymore. But it was like she ate like a little bird. She would cut the sugar in any desserts that she made. Like, it was just lifelong. And, you know, my Grammy never made comments about my body or anything like that, but I understand the impact that growing up in a household like that, where you're watching your parents focus so much on their weight, like that absolutely has an effect on how you view the world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So because of all that, I was aware of my size, I would say at a pretty young age. I was one of the largest people in my class, both height and weight, until I'd say middle school. Once the boys started hitting puberty, they got taller, but I still remained one of the tallest girls. And a lot of like adults and family members would be like, "Oh, look how big you've gotten." And it was never like, or it was usually not like, "Wow, look how fat she is," but
Mm-hmm.
just me being big, always always brought to my attention. Um Adding that to being a really shy, quiet, gifted kid that skipped a grade and was younger than everyone else, and, you know, undiagnosed neurodivergent, acted like a little weirdo. Like,
Right. Yeah.
it, like that, plus being so aware of myself and being so shy and not having the social skills, like, I never felt like I fit in at all. But I would say at home, like my mom, I think she did a good job with trying to teach me what balanced meals were. Like, I know that there is a major lack of education when it comes to nutrition, but for all intents and purposes, I think my mom did the best she could with that. But it was, even though there was a lot of education around that, it was still very much diet on or diet off. Where if the diet was on, we were exercising, it was strict. And then inevitably, it would go back to diet off,
Mm-hmm.
where we didn't do shit and we ate what we wanted to.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily think that, like, that's inherently, well, it's not like the worst way to be, you know, but it's not ideal. It's especially not ideal whenever you are trying to, like, teach kids how to eat healthily. Like, it just, I think most of the stuff that happened, like, there was not much thought or intention behind it. That was just the best that everyone was trying to figure out how to do.
Right.
Um, but even when it was diet off, my mom kept a really close eye on the things that I ate, which isn't bad. But telling telling a 5 or 6 year old that they can't have chocolate milk because whenever they do, they gain weight, so only get white milk at school because otherwise she'll know.
Mm-hmm.
That shit sticks around. And then I started having to be a part of diets in my family. Like, the first diet I was on was Atkins when I was 6 years old with them. It was not my choice. I didn't know what the heck that was. But the second time was South Beach, which is just another version of Atkins and keto, slightly rebranded. That
Yeah.
was in like middle school, and again, that was led by my parents. Um, the third diet, and I would say the most impactful, like in a negative way, was in my sophomore year of high school. I wanted to do that, and it was because I read an article in 17 magazine about a girl who weighed what I weighed at the time. And it was like one of those like sob stories, like, oh, she was a size 24. And of course, reading that as a teenager, like, that just kind of broke my brain. And
Mm-hmm.
I starved myself for 9 months. I lost 43 pounds doing it, but basically my process was whatever portion I was given, I ate half of it. But I lost 43 pounds. My dad bought me a purse as a reward.
Wow.
And yeah,
Well, like he didn't
there
know, but
was
still.
no, no, he didn't. and there were supposed to be more rewards, but as you could imagine, eating half of the food that you're given doesn't really last.
Mm-hmm.
So after we went on vacation to the beach, my diet was over, and I gained, I'd say over the next couple of years I gained about half the weight back, which isn't the worst way that could have gone. You know,
Right.
those drastic diets can just be really hard on you overall. Um, but even in spite of all these diets, like my parents were always, they were really complimentary overall. Like it's not like I only ever heard negative shit from them. They talk about how beautiful I am, how smart I am, but it was like a fuck, this is hard.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
hard.
this is fucking talking.
It's a lot.
Yeah. But even though they were complimentary, a lot of the issues or a lot of the things that they said to me about my weight were, it was like oh, we're worried about your health. We don't want you to get diabetes, because by the time they were having these conversations, my dad was diabetic. He had had his first heart attack. So it was like, oh, well, you don't have to worry about this now, but this will happen to you later if you don't lose weight. But it was, you know, like, what is a teenager supposed to do with that information?
Right.
Like, what?
No.
Yeah. It's just a lot of it just out of my control, and a lot of stress that I really didn't need to have. So after I moved out, um, obviously my teenage years through like my early, is he good? So, okay. So from like my teen years through like my mid 20s, I tried a bunch of different ways to lose weight. Obviously had the metformin, which sucked. The phentermine, I tried that 2 separate times. The first time it actually worked relatively well. The second time I was in my mid 20s, and I my anxiety started, like I have started having like a serious problem with anxiety. Didn't realize that's what it was, and took phentermine, and that did not help
Yeah, absolutely
at all.
not.
Also tried things like Weight Watchers, revisited starving myself. Um, throughout all of this, I had developed binge eating disorder right around the time that I was graduating high school and moved out to go to college. And I didn't know what that was until I met you. And you told me about it. And these men are going to kill us. Like, we're going to kill these men.
Yeah. Double homicide.
I don't fucking know. Whatever. We'll work around it.
We will.
Okay, where the fuck was I?
You'd met me, and I had talked to you about
Yes.
binge eating disorder.
Yes, you had. So I think the biggest thing that I learned about it from you was just the nuance to it, that it wasn't the stereotypical, like how it's presented in TV and stuff, that there's a lot more subtleties to it. And I know you and I experienced that differently too.
Mm-hmm.
But through all of this, my relationship with my body, exercise, food, all of it was really fucked up. Like, I hated exercise because the only time that I did that was to lose weight. So it had a really negative association.
Mm-hmm.
I hated myself because I didn't fit in anywhere. I felt like just a fuck up on all different levels. And I hated the rules that I had to follow to not gain weight, because I couldn't gain weight, even though no matter what I tried, I was a growing person and I gained weight anyway. So feeling like I couldn't have chocolate milk, or, you know, if a bunch of my friends were having pizza, I couldn't have too much pizza because I would gain weight really easily.
Mm-hmm.
So just all of this really limiting shit.
Right.
And I didn't know how to deal with it. So once I moved out of the dorms in college and like got my own place, that was really, I think, what kicked off a lot of the habits that I had to unlearn. I was a lot more sedentary. You know, living off campus, I had to drive. I didn't cook a lot, and so I would eat fast food 2 to 3 times a day. And obviously, was doing college kid things like drinking and doing other things that can give you the munchies. Like I was just living. I was living the best life that I knew how. I was disregarding all the rules that I thought were like were the rules that were imposed upon me that I thought were there just to like kill my vibe basically.
Mm-hmm.
So from the time that I graduated high school to when I graduated college, I gained about 100 pounds, give or take. By the end of college, obviously I wasn't weighing myself very much. So I was just going off of memory when I was writing all of this. So after college, I was out on my own, paying my own rent, had my first big girl job. So I got into cooking and really loved doing that. And I stopped trying to lose weight as often as I had been because, like, what had been modeled in my childhood, I would try to lose weight for a little while, then get discouraged,
Right.
and, the yo yo, the
Right.
cycle.
Yes.
It's the exhausting cycle.
Exhausting cycle.
But I started to kind of accept my weight, like accept it and stop hating myself for being fat and accepting the fact that I was a fat person. And to be honest, that did start as apathy and like, well, I never fucking lose weight anyway. So
Right.
why keep trying? I might as well just fucking accept it. There was a lot of that attitude toward it at first, but it lessened over time through learning about like body positivity and fat liberation and stuff like that as the years progressed. And I got more to a point where I was okay with being fat. Like I didn't love how I looked, but I was trying to dress in ways that made me feel good and not hide myself as much. And then the pandemic happened.
Bum bum bum.
Yeah. And we fast forwarded. Oops, I just hit my mic. Sorry. We fast forwarded to 2021 when COVID happened, and I gained 70 pounds in less than a year for sure. Um, I didn't expect being at home all the time like that to impact me as much as it did because I thought I was sedentary beforehand, but I definitely underestimated how much the movement of even just commuting and like having an
Right.
active social life, all the little things that I was doing, even if it wasn't exercise, I didn't realize how much that added up. But gaining that much weight in a short amount of time, it was really hard on my physical well-being. My back pain started getting worse. Like I was not strong. I got out of breath really easily. Things that never happened to me before. Even though going into the pandemic I was 360 to 370 pounds. Like I was big. I was a very big person. But I didn't, aside from having back pain, like I didn't feel hindered by it then.
Right.
And then it was like all of a sudden I was very hindered by it. And I, so like I wanted to go back to the gym to try and get stronger. And I wasn't trying to lose weight. I really just wanted to try and get active. And it was nice to get out of the house. But it was very apparent very early on how much the extra weight had impacted my ability to do anything. Like I couldn't do a squat with even without weight. I couldn't do a squat with proper form. I couldn't do planks. Getting down on like my hands and knees to do any kind of floor exercises was, oh my god, it was so painful. Just like the pressure on my knees. So
Yeah.
By the time the summer of 2021 rolled around, I decided to get weight loss surgery. And at the time, it felt like that was my only option because I didn't want to starve myself. I didn't want to do all the unhealthy methods that I had tried and failed at in the past. I couldn't exercise the way I wanted to. Like, even stuff like yoga, that it wasn't possible for me.
Right.
And it felt like that was the only way that I could possibly be successful. And I was honestly also just tired. I was sick and tired of being in pain. Like, anyone who's listening that deals with chronic pain, like, you understand how it saps the life out of you.
Yes.
And I was tired of that. I wanted to be able to live my life again, as I felt like I couldn't. I felt like I was a shell of my former self, both because of everything that I went through, like just coping with the COVID pandemic, and then all of this. Like, the last 3 years they've been really hard on me. But let's see. Read my teeny tiny outline type. But let's see. Okay. So that summer, I made this decision really fast. Like, I looked into it for probably like a day and a half. And I talked to you about it, and I saw like a Facebook status about it, and I was like, okay, fuck it. That's what we're doing.
Right. That's
in
so
typical
funny.
Sagittarius fashion.
Typical Sagittarius. Yes, absolutely.
So I submitted my paperwork to start the process. For me, I didn't need a referral for my insurance. They just covered it. So I was able to just go right to them. And I had my introductory webinar at the beginning of August that year. That was something that my now husband sat in with me on because he had questions. It was a really big, really fast decision for me to make, and he was going to back my play no matter what, but he was obviously freaked out by the idea of having surgery. He didn't really know what it was. Because I had done so much Googling, there wasn't a ton of new information in the webinar that I wasn't aware of already. But the thing that stuck with me was when my surgeon said that without surgical intervention, like, the percentage of people who lose over 50 pounds and keep it off, it's like less than 5%.
Yeah, it's really low.
And I was like, yeah, really, really low. And I was like, well, I can't beat those odds. That was it. Thinking that I had to lose like 150, 200 pounds. I was like, there's no way. Like, right. This is what I got to do. And it was 2 weeks after we got married when I realized that I made the right choice. And I had went through my fuck around era, and I was finding out because my back got fucking wrecked. From pulling weeds, like 5 minutes of pulling weeds, trying to be a hero. So, like, from Labor Day weekend 2021 until now, I have been in pain every single day. Every day.
Insane.
Absolutely insane. And it's so much better now. But the moderate to severe pain, like, it lasted up until I was, like, it was probably more down to like mild to moderate by the time I had the surgery, but it didn't stop being like noticeable until I was probably 2 or 3 months post-op.
Wow.
Yeah. During all of this, I was diagnosed with degenerative disc disease in my low back, and there was one disc like at my natural waist, whatever region of the spine that is. I always get them confused other than lumbar. But I was diagnosed with that, and also facet syndrome, which is basically arthritis in the tiny little joints of your spine, which was causing the bulk of my pain issues.
Right.
because they were also really hard to treat with injections because you need a special machine to inject them there.
Ew.
Yeah. So through all of this, I was seeing my chiropractor weekly, getting injections once or twice a week, taking these prescription strength NSAIDs that would fuck with my bone density if I was on them for too long, muscle relaxers. I took steroids, aquatic therapy. Like, back pain was my life. And it was just to be okay, just to function.
Yeah, exactly. Just to be normal.
Yeah. And it started off, like, all of that started off relatively simple at first because I'd had back issues. But by the time I got to, like, into the winter of 2021, I had to do all of that stuff. And I know we had to reschedule our meetup because of it too. It was really sad, but like the only reason I could have gone at all was because of the NSAIDs I was on.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Like, so bad for you, but those were some bad bitches. They helped so much.
Terrible for you, but helped me survive.
Literally, I couldn't have gotten on a plane
No.
without it. I couldn't have taken a hasty walk without them at that
Right.
time.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I had my intake appointment with my surgeon in October, and every surgeon, every insurance plan has different requirements for what you have to do to be approved to have the surgery. But for me, I had to get blood work to check all my numbers, make sure I was good. I was really, really low in vitamin D. The normal range is like 30 to 130. My vitamin D level was 10.
Jesus.
Fucking 10. I know. And vitamin D is one of those vitamins that, like, it makes your mental health worse if you're low in
Yeah.
it. It affects your pain. So
Oh
I
my
had
God,
to be
Hayley.
I know.
Go
But it's
outside. Like, touch grass. Like, what are you
literally.
doing?
I mean, I don't know. It was like a global pandemic.
Yeah, that's true. Fuck.
Being a being a homebody in a pandemic, living somewhere that has 4 seasons a year, so it's not hot and sunny all the time.
Right.
I was a fucking hermit. But yeah, I had to be on prescription supplements to correct that. Um, Other than that, most of my numbers were good. My A1C was like a hair high. It was, I think, normal for them was like the highest point was 5.6, and like I was a 5.8. So it was technically pre-diabetic, but they were like, well, you're trying to get weight loss surgery. It's fine.
Right.
It's not really a big deal. But I also had to do all of this stuff. If I did not do it, they wouldn't have put me through for the surgery. It wasn't even a matter of paying for it out of pocket. Like, without insurance coverage, they wouldn't have operated on me.
Right.
But I had to do monthly weigh-ins in a doctor's office, monthly nutritional classes. Couldn't miss any of them. If I did miss one, like, I had to reschedule within the same month, or if I missed one, I would have to start all the way over.
Wow.
Yeah. Had to do a psych evaluation to make sure that obviously I was in sound mind to be able to consent to a surgery like this. Had to do a cardiologist exam. They did like the upper GI exam to make sure everything was functioning, to check for a hiatal hernia, stuff like that. I had to do a pulmonologist exam, which, because of the sleep apnea questions, I had to do a sleep study, and I was diagnosed with sleep apnea. And I had to wear a CPAP from, I think it was like the last 3 or 4 months between like the waiting period and when I had my surgery. But I had to use it, or that was another thing. If I had untreated sleep apnea, they also wouldn't operate on me. The sleep apnea diagnosis, honestly, that one hit me That one hit me really hard. That was, I think that was the first thing that I experienced that it was like so strongly tied to fatness. And that was really hard to take. I don't know. I don't really even understand why that one was, but I also I hated wearing the CPAP. I couldn't sleep with it on, so not super well rested in
Right.
addition to the back pain and all of that shit. But I also had to have a letter from my doctor, which wasn't a big deal. I had to find a PCP first because I didn't have one. I had just gone to urgent care for like 10 years.
Yeah,
But
same. Same.
yeah, when they asked if I had one, I was like, I'll have to find one. And they looked at me like I sprouted a third eye. But
Yeah, it's so funny.
yeah. And the last requirement, my surgeon wanted me to lose 40 pounds or 10% of my body weight. Um, there are some insurances that require weight loss beforehand. Thankfully, mine didn't because this was just, he wanted me to lose it. And if I hadn't, he would have still operated on me.
Right.
It's more like to show them that you're really about it and for general safety because I was over 400 pounds by that point. My BMI was very high and surgery is a lot more dangerous at that point.
Right.
Let's see. So I was supposed to have surgery in March of 2022. That was like the latest that it was supposed to be. But because of COVID, I didn't get to have it until June 3rd. And the waiting period was so hard. Like, especially once I started getting into like early 2022, I just wanted to move on with my life
Right.
because I felt so stuck of just going through all these motions and doing the same thing and feeling miserable all the time and just having to wait, like relying on someone else and just relinquishing that kind of control. That was really hard for me to do. Just, I like being a control freak.
No.
Yeah. But so for the 2 weeks prior to my surgery, I had to do what's called a liver shrinking diet. Um, and that's a safety measure for the laparoscopic surgery. They need to make sure that your liver's as small as possible so they can cut your stomach out, basically.
Yeah. Basically.
Yeah. Um, and it was one of those things where, again, it was basically like on the honor system. But if they started the surgery and saw that your liver was too big, they would close you up and not perform it.
Jesus.
And yeah, like they wouldn't do it anyway. I don't think it's safe to try and do it anyway. But I couldn't, for 2 weeks prior to surgery, I couldn't have more than 800 calories a day, um, 60 to 90 grams of protein a day that I could get from shakes or milk. Like there was a list of approved drinks. I didn't have to be on like a clear liquid diet or anything like that. The main thing was I couldn't have any caffeine or any sugary drinks.
Ooh.
So even stuff like Powerade or stuff like that had to be zero sugar. And I also had to drink 64 ounces of water a day outside of the protein shakes.
Gross.
Yeah, that was that was the hardest phase of the whole thing because having a full size stomach, like, whew, God, that was hard. I I caved the first day, and
Yeah.
I ate chips. Because I that was the one thing in the house that I still had, and I was like, fuck it, like it's the first day. I'm gonna stick to it after this.
Right.
I shouldn't have done that. Like that was absolutely fucking gamble, but clearly clearly I stuck to it well enough the other 13 days. But yeah, it didn't really start to sink in that I was having surgery and what that meant until like the last few days before the appointment. And when they called me the night before to give me my time, I had a panic attack afterwards and I wanted to call back and cancel because I was so scared. like this was my first surgery at all since I had a surgery when I was born. Obviously, I didn't remember that, but this would be my first time under anesthesia, my first time having any sort of surgery. I was terrified. And it was also the idea of so much change, even though it's what I wanted and I felt prepared for it. That's how I that's how I handle shit. I will commit and then I will freak out later. But
Yeah,
I always end up going through with it, but I never freak out ahead of time. Like it's after basically the deed is done. Like even though
that's
I could have
crazy.
backed out, like I spent 10 months preparing for it, so I couldn't back out either, you know?
Right, right,
How
right.
I don't know if how I could have faced myself if I did, or anyone else, because I talked about it all the fucking time. But so I had my surgery on June 3rd. I had it really early. Um, no real complications from it, but the first 24 hours were tough. The first thing that I remember afterwards is waking up in the recovery room and there was a nurse checking on me, and I was mumbling like, "Oh, I'm in pain," and they were like, "Okay, I'm going to give you some fentanyl," and I was like, "What?" And I like blacked back out again, and then woke up in my room. I slept a lot. Like I slept for the next 8 hours off and on, and obviously my husband was there with me. He was pretty much just sitting around while I slept, which he couldn't have done anything else, but it was nice to like have someone else there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Even he couldn't have done anything, but doing that by myself, it would have just felt really lonely.
Yeah.
Um I so I slept a lot during the day, but I was up all night pretty much. I was only in the hospital for a day, but at the time I could only really tolerate the broth that they gave me and sugar-free Powerade. Plain water, even like room temperature water, disgusting. I would throw it up instantly, and I this is going to be gross. I was throwing up like dried blood
Ew.
and like brown blood. So it wasn't bright red, so I didn't panic a ton, but I did have to be like, "Hey, is this normal?" And it hurt so bad, obviously because I had 5 or 6 different incisions in my stomach,
Yeah.
and my stomach itself was freshly cut. So puking hurt really bad.
Absolutely. And the gases that they have to use to like puff up your
Mhm.
shit, so
Yeah,
painful.
that was really painful.
It's so painful.
I didn't know what to expect with that, but it was just like it just feel like you feel like the Michelin man kind of, because it's like you're so puffy and it hurts and you can't like move right. But so I was only in there for one night, and I did well enough to get to go home. Of course, they gave me blood thinners, nausea medication, pain medication, gas drops, which, if anyone's considering having the surgery that's listening, they sell the exact same gas drops at Walmart in the baby section. They're like $3. It helped so much. It helps. I didn't. I thought it was just a bunch of baloney, and I tried not to take it for a while. And I was like, oh my god, like I need my drops.
Yeah, give me the drops.
Yeah, and it was like the bottle was only like $3, so
Worth it.
everyone
Worth
remember
it.
that.
Yes, yes, worth it.
Honestly, any abdominal surgery get you some gas drops, but
Absolutely.
so other than that, I basically just had to walk as much as I could. Um, I thankfully thought ahead and bought myself an abdominal binder to help with the surgery, and it really did come in handy because I carry a lot of weight in my stomach. I have an apron belly, and just the moving with fresh incisions, like my belly just jiggling with movement or having to bend over, like it was really obviously very hard to. And the binder just kind of gave me that extra support. It didn't make it pain free, but at least it didn't feel like in my big incision it would burn if I stretched too far. And
Right.
I thankfully with the binder didn't have to deal with that. Um, yeah, I could only sleep on my back for like the first 4 weeks, which was the worst because I am a side sleeper.
Yeah.
It, that really fucking sucked. But the first 2 weeks post op, I was still on a liquid diet. Pretty much same requirements as pre op, except protein shakes counted for liquid now. Um, that phase was really hard too, just because I was consuming liquids out of a medical cup, like a 1 ounce medical cup, and I was sipping that. Like the difference is drastic at
Absolutely.
what you can consume, and with your stomach being sore, the restriction that it gives you is really high, and you have to go really slow. If you whenever you're early post op, if you drink something a little too fast or something like that, it can come right back up. Or if it just sits and you feel full, like you're full up between your like on your breastbone,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a totally different kind of full, but it hurts really bad too. Then weeks 2 to 4, I got to transition to purees, and that was like the best day of my life. It was I was so sick of protein shakes because I was drinking like 3 of them a day,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not a big sweets person, or I definitely wasn't then. I've gotten a bit of a sweet tooth since I had surgery, but I was sick of sweet shit. One of the first things I made was a deviled egg puree, and it was like I was like, oh god, like, it was so
Disgusting.
fucking. You basically just make deviled eggs and puree them, but
Yeah, that's
no, there was everything looked gross. I feel like I posted a few pictures of it on my Instagram at first. Like I even pureed Chipotle at one point.
I know. Like you puree girlies will go for it. Like,
Oh yeah,
didn't you
it
do
was.
like a salmon thing?
Yeah, that one wasn't super good, but like there was one where I got canned chicken and I got a can of Panera's broccoli cheddar soup and pureed that together. It was actually really
I bet that
good.
was really good. You know what? I bet that was so good.
It was. It absolutely was.
Yes.
At that point, I had to also start the chewable vitamins, which were not good. They were horrible,
Disgusting.
and I could only keep them down if I took them at the same time as a protein shake. Otherwise, it was like instant upchuck. Could not. But at that point, I also had to start taking my other supplements like calcium citrate and B12. I obviously had to keep taking vitamin D because I was low on it, but that's another thing about having weight loss surgery is that you have to take those supplements for the rest of your
The
life.
rest of your life.
Mm-hmm. It is a commitment.
Yep.
That's one of the many reasons why I have such beef with people who say it's the easy way out, because you might lose weight faster,
Mm-hmm.
but having to relearn how you eat, how you drink, taking an entirely different medicine regimen, eating a quarter cup of food at a time,
Right.
that's not easy. It's
No,
not
it's
easy at all.
not at all.
Yeah. So weeks 4 to 6 was just soft foods, which was one step closer to solids. Basically anything you could cut with a fork, then no red meat, and um I was trying to remember the different requirements, but honestly, every surgical program, their requirements are a little different. So if anyone who's listening to this went through this, I guarantee that they had to do a different length liquid diet, or they had a clear liquids only phase, or
Mm-hmm.
wild shit like that. Everyone just, it's weird how it's a surgery, but everyone does it like just a little bit different. But at 6 weeks, I was back to solids,
Woo
which
woo.
was this was awesome. I missed the crunchy textures, and they still recommended being careful with like raw vegetables or stuff like that because they can be hard to digest.
Mm-hmm.
But up until that point, the reason for all of these different stages was because of my stomach, the line of incisions in my stomach healing.
Right.
Things that would be crunchy or pokey or needed too much like work for your stomach to digest could cause an issue with the incisions. Stuff could get stuck in them. Some people, obviously, they test for leaks before they close you up, but if you're not careful, that is a risk of a complication. You can open your incisions again and you have to get that fixed immediately, obviously.
Right.
I was trying to remember how long it took me to like gain all of my energy back, and I think it took probably 3 to 4 months for me to feel like back to normal again. Um, One thing to note about my progress at this point, by I looked it up, by my 6th week post-op, I had lost 27 pounds, and my total loss at that point was almost 80 pounds. So just insane. But that whole time, the mental aspect is so hard. Like, I thought 27 pounds was nothing.
Right.
I thought the whole time that I was just fucking it up, that this wasn't going to work. Like, my first 2 weeks, I lost like 12 pounds, and I was upset because I didn't lose 20. Like, there's just, I think a lot of it is from the anesthesia and just the process of going through the surgery. Like, it's really hard on you, and like your hormones and shit are just all over the place.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially factoring in such fast weight loss as well. Like, your body is being flooded with hormones from that, from the fat that's being stored. You have to be careful for at least the first year or so. You're not supposed to get pregnant for probably like the first 18 months.
Yeah,
Some
they
people
say
do.
18 months.
Yeah. Obviously, some people do and things go fine, but they obviously want you to be on some form of birth control, and be very careful because you are just not eating that much food.
Right.
And having something like a fetus that would take even more energy from you when you have such limited facilities to consume food anyway. It's just harder, and it's not necessarily the safest. But yeah, so the mental aspect of all of this has been the hardest part for me. I am really blessed that I don't have any issues with any foods that I like. I've tolerated everything really well. I don't really drink anymore, other than maybe a single drink on occasion. But I was not a big drinker prior to all of it. Like, I came down to see you, bought a 12-pack of White Claw, and didn't drink a single fucking one.
Not a single one.
Like, I used to drink, I used to be a party girl, but right. It's like, once I stopped going to bars, I just wasn't super into drinking. But now, especially earlier on, like the first 6 months post-op, if I had a drink, I would get a headache like an hour after I finished it. It was like I got an accelerated hangover. Mm-hmm. And that was not fun. I didn't like that.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that was like the dumping syndrome that you can get.
I don't know. I wondered about that. But
it's so sugary, especially if you're not eating with it protein. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Some sugary stuff did bother me. Other stuff didn't. Like, remember I had that crumble cookie mishap whenever God, I ate a whole crumble cookie because I thought that the calories on the package meant for a whole cookie, and I was like, damn, this is a big cookie. So I ate the whole thing, realized that it meant a quarter cookie, and cue a meltdown.
Which is, I'm sorry, that's crazy amount of calories for a single food item. Mm-hmm. That's nuts.
For one cookie, yeah. But just be stated honestly.
Yeah.
Because I obviously looked beforehand, because I knew it was full sugar. I wanted to be careful because some people can't really tolerate sugary stuff. Thankfully, that wasn't an issue. But like, goddamn, like I ate 600, 700 calories in one sitting without expecting to.
Yeah, see, that's my thing. For a cookie, like, I could get 2 double cheeseburgers for the amount of calories that one cookie is. Like, for me, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, if I'm gonna consume that many in one sitting, I would rather eat a quarter of, like, cheesy fries.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna make a more informed decision if this is
Yeah.
if we're strictly talking about calories here.
Right. Yeah.
Nuts.
Especially in that type of scenario.
Yeah.
I would have there are so many other ways I could have, spent those kind of
Like,
calories.
excuse me.
Yeah.
Better packaging. Anyways, sorry.
Literally. No, it's okay. um yeah, that type of stuff was really hard to deal with. There were a few post-op visits that I had where it was like once I got out of the early days where it was like, okay, we're sure you're not going to die now. It felt like the script was flipped a little bit. Like the program that I went through pre-op, I felt extremely prepared for everything as far as like physical stuff. They couldn't have really prepared me for the mental things because everyone's so different, but I knew what to expect otherwise. And they made it seem like they prioritized protein, um, making sure I hit that goal, water goal, all of that. But then afterwards, they started implying that I was eating too many calories. And it was like I was eating 800 calories, but someone else might only be eating like an average of 500. And it's like, okay, 300 calories really is not that much. But when I just got through telling you that I increased 800 because I was having headaches at 6,
Right.
maybe don't say, have you tried 500 calories?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And also, I'm a big person. Like, I'm almost 6 feet tall. Even after losing all this weight, I was still well over 300 pounds. I'm going to have different requirements than someone who's 5'2", you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So here we are, a whole year later. I have lost almost 180 pounds. I have been stalled at I've been like between 261 and 264 for probably 6 weeks now. Um, that I like whole numbers, so I would like to get to 180 pounds lost for sure. But for all intents and purposes, I am so much happier now. I feel like, and it's easy to like say, oh, well, like, of course you're happier. You lost a bunch of weight. You feel like, all the different reasons that society might tell us. And, to be honest, being able to wear clothes that I want to wear, that's a chunk of why I'm happy, because it sucked not having the options, especially whenever we were a lot younger. Like, having to dress like a grandma was not a vibe.
Not a vibe.
It's like I feel like I'm discovering my personal style for like the very first time at 31. But the biggest thing is that like I can just move a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
I don't make old man noises when I get up off the couch anymore, or like I can take a big step over a puddle and not wonder if my back is going to like help me out with that or not.
Right. Right.
And my chronic pain is to the point where like aside from the past couple of days after I stepped in that stupid hole, like it's my pain level it goes from mild to ignorable.
Right.
And all I have, because I had the surgery, I can't take NSAIDs now,
Mm-hmm.
because of the increased risk of ulcers. But I have my chiropractor, who I adore. I have CBD, and I have my medical card, and that's all I need. And that is honestly just amazing, because having to take all of those different pills and get injections and like chasing just feeling halfway decent, like it was just exhausting. And
Absolutely.
I felt like the pills didn't make me feel like, they made me physically feel better, but they also made me feel like shit,
Right.
like medicine can do. very pro medicine on this podcast, but
We are.
it was not a vibe.
Yeah.
I as far as some of the earlier things that we talked about, I feel like over the past 2 years, I've really gotten a lot better with my relationship with food. And I do think that a lot of that can be attributed to the body positivity and like breaking up with diet culture kind of path that I was on in the years leading up to it. But I feel like getting diagnosed with ADHD and getting on medication helped me so much with the binge eating aspect. Like, I don't think I would be as successful or happy with the post-op process if I wasn't on the medication, because I thought about food all the time.
Right.
And I take Vyvanse, which is approved for both binge eating disorder and ADHD. So it's like my brain is just quiet. I'm not constantly thinking about fucking food. And that is amazing to me. But the one thing I still struggle with is moving my body regularly. It is very easy for me to get stressy and not want to do anything and just cocoon. I am just trying to try my best and not get on a shame spiral with it.
Right.
And that, honestly, learning about like separating myself from the shame, like when you told me about that all those years ago now, like that just, it was so helpful to have that thought process like brought into my life, because I was so upset with how I'd gotten myself to the point that I was upset that like I would see myself not meal prepping and going through a drive-through and getting a bunch of fast food for lunch that I really didn't even want and
Right.
eating it. And it was like I was watching myself do this and I didn't want to, but it was like I couldn't stop. And those feelings, once you taught me about removing the shame from it, like that shit's already happened. You did what you did. That was transformative, honestly.
Thank
You're so welcome. Oh my goodness.
See how transformative my advice is? You should take my course.
Exactly. Dude, I will write you a recommendation if you need it.
You
But to wrap this up, I'm happy with my body as it is now. I would still like to lose another 20 to 40 pounds depending on what day I think about that. But it's not that I'm not happy with my body. I think it's just honestly wanting a little bit more of a buffer, wanting to be a little smaller for pain reasons to see if it will get any better, and also just worrying about the potential for regain, having like irrational fears that one day I'll wake up and it won't work anymore and I'll just start gaining weight like I always did. It's not rational, but right. It doesn't change the fact that because this is like the only time weight loss has actually worked for me, I'm not to the point where this is a legitimate different time. I still worry that it will stop working. Something I did want to note that really held me back from surgery for a really long time, because I had obviously considered it previously, just like in passing, but I was always so worried about the loose skin and how I would look. Like I was so caught up in the aesthetics of that, and it really doesn't bother me. I have it. I've lost a lot of weight. I have loose skin. Not a big deal. Not the inconvenience or the hideous appearance that I expected.
Right.
So a major plus, because I thought that was something I was going to really have to struggle with. I also have some acid reflux now. It's common after getting the VSG surgery.
Mm-hmm.
It's why, like, if you have GERD or if you have reflux beforehand, they recommend the bypass.
Bypass.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it is what it is. It's really mild, and the the medicine that they gave me after the surgery, it helps, so I've just stayed on it. And for anyone who follows me on Instagram, I have bitched about my minor bladder prolapse and having to do pelvic floor PT. That sucks. But what are you going to do? You know?
Yeah. You can move your body now, and that's what's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it hasn't been a perfect journey, but it has turned out way better than I expected it to. And the things that I'm listing that are like downsides, like very, very minor. Like, is it weird not being invisible in public now? Yes, still.
Yes.
But, you know, I feel okay going in public now, and I can trust my body to hold me up while I'm out there. So I'm I'm winning. But I think all of this really all of this really sunk in, especially at the Paramore concert on Sunday.
Yes.
And this is for anyone who's wondering how much longer I will talk about this. This is the wrap up. This is the last little tidbit about it. So, I have been a Paramore fan since I was 15 years old, so like half my life. I have wanted to see them live that whole time. A friend of mine and I got really close to when we were 16. My dad told us we weren't going the night before. That stung. I remembered it Sunday, so yeah, that fucking sucked. But I was really nervous for this concert for a lot of reasons. Like, my first concert since COVID started, my first concert in like 4 or 5 years, for one. My first concert since losing 180 pounds. My first Paramore concert, which is just like when you're seeing a band that you adore that much, it's like you're excited, but it's also like, God, like, what if I've built it up to something it's not, like, what if I get there and I'm underwhelmed? But I also really struggled with the outfit that I had picked out. I, it was a super cute outfit. I bought a crop top from Target, and I shared it in a TikTok a few weeks ago. I did like a little try on, but it was like this Future Collective, like, crocheted crop top. Love it. These shorts overalls from Old Navy, and so crop top plus shorts overalls. Obviously, my whole arm is out. My stomach is out. My side stomach at that is out. I'm showing a lot of leg. And it's like, the arms and the legs by themselves didn't bother me. But showing my stomach, like, by itself would have been a lot. All of that together, like, I felt naked. And like, I was completely covered. Like, it was not lewd at all, but I felt like I felt fucking naked in public.
Right, right.
And it was all these thoughts, like, run through your head in that situation, like, oh my God, people can see my stomach from the side, like, they're going to see my rolls whenever I sit, or if my arms are up, they're going to see my bingo wings flapping around, like my loose skin and all of that. But the cool thing about that, like, I almost changed. I almost changed into something that I would have been comfortable in. One, we were late because of me. So
Shock.
that was also part of it. But it was like, I bought this and I'm going to wear this. I'm going to stick to the plan. I did like a really bold eye makeup look. Put on lashes for the first time since our wedding, and oh my God.
Looked
Like,
fierce.
thank you. I ended up holding myself up in this room because it was so cold in here, and I was so sweaty and it was humid in the bathroom. The lashes weren't sticking, and I was freaking the fuck out.
Oh my god.
But they did stick, and we went, and it was an absolutely beautiful experience. I Leading up to it, I feel like I was out, not in my body for a lot of it. And like, I knew I was excited, but even like the day of, before I got ready, I was surprised I wasn't more amped. And it was absolutely me like separating myself from all of the anxieties that I was having, and also all of the huge feelings that are trying to come out now while I talk. But uh just getting the glasses out of the way in case I need to wipe tears. But Paramore's early albums, there were a lot of songs on there that were tied to specific memories, and times when times when I really hated myself and I hated my life. No one understood me. Like, I felt so alone, just like I didn't belong anywhere. And obviously, when I wasn't allowed to go to the concert the first time with my best friend, I took it really personally, and I held on to that. And hearing, oh Jesus, hearing them perform, like, especially whenever they perform Decode, holy crap! Like, I was weeping, but I was still holding it together, because if I had just let it go, like, I would have been like sobbing, and like to the point they're like, "Dude, is that person okay?"
Oh.
Like, I was standing there hugging myself. Like, part of it was me holding my shirt and my wristlet and shit, but it was also like I was at a concert with someone that I adore. I went with my husband, someone who I adore, and someone who loves me just the way I am. I have a septum piercing that I always wanted when I was 15 and 16. I have tattoos. I was wearing something that teenage me would have never thought to wear, had the guts to wear. And I was seeing my favorite band. And it's still just like how fucking far I came. And all honestly, it's because of the people that I have in my life to support me and show me that I'm worthy of love and treat me as well as I treat them. But it was also me taking the chance on myself to have the surgery that, through all of that process, gave me the confidence to be myself, just not be the cool girl or like the perfectly put together girl, the hyper feminine girl, the butch girl, like whatever, like nothing, no titles, just me being myself and feeling okay and safe enough to do that. It was it wasn't something that I really realized until I met with my new therapist the day after, but I was telling her shit about my life, like giving background on the relationship with my parents, how things were when I grew up, all that crap. And it was like, she just, even basic info, what I could give her in a 1 hour session, or even like 15 minutes, really. She was like, it sounds like you never had the space to be Hayley, to just be Hayley, to not be Hayley the daughter, Hayley the good student, Hayley the athlete, anything like that, to just be yourself and express how you feel. And it was like, just like
Right.
brain breaking, because it was like, you know what, you're right. I never did. No wonder I was so goddamn angry all the time. No wonder I screamed my little heart out to Paramore lyrics.
Right. And you got to be Hayley at the
Yeah,
concert.
yeah. And I feel like over the last year, I've gotten to be Hayley more days than I haven't been. And that is huge to me.
Huge.
Huge. But that, I think, about wraps up my spiel. Unless there's something that I missed that you think I should mention.
I don't think so. I think you nailed it.
Thank you. Yeah, we can. We're gonna take this thing out of here. So if you guys like our podcast, if you don't follow us, you should. If you like our podcast, you should share it with everyone that you know. Leave us reviews. I'm absolutely ripping the judgy's outro.
Yeah, right. Like, leave us reviews. Follow us on all social media. You can be just yourself here. Don't worry.
Absolutely.
We don't want you to be anything other than you. Plus a follower. And a subscriber. But you know, whatever you want to be is fine. So thank you, Hayley, for sharing your story with us. We officially have a guest application that we're sending to people that have asked us. So people are going to be filling out guest applications. So we're going to have a couple guests on for you guys. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, thank you, Hayley, for sharing with us and being so vulnerable. And we'll see you guys next week.
All right. Bye, guys.